Hey, Dr. Von Duke here. So this quick and dirty video is about rubric number 13, which is on task 3 of the Special Education Ed TPA portfolio project. Task 3, rubric 13, relates to question 2C. What's important about that is many times a rubric will involve all the sections of a question, or it even could go across questions. But in this case, everything is really there on 2C. So if you don't answer that well, you may miss important points on this rubric. So what's the guiding question behind this? What are we really being asked here? Well, how will you help your focus learner use that specific feedback that you gave them in rubric 12, and how will you help them understand, remember, extend that feedback either in a subsequent task or in the future? So the nice thing there is it's in the future. You don't have to have documented evidence like you do in task 2. Obviously, rubric 13 relates to rubric 12 in that you're taking that feedback. By the way, this is what can often feel annoying and redundant when you're filling out the EdTPA. You might feel like, I just answered that question. But of course, there's a nuance that's different with this part. And again, it encompasses an entire rubric, 1/5 of your score for task 3. It also relates to rubric 15 in that as you're thinking about what the student needs moving forward, you can relate that into how you create a plan for your student on what would be next, which is what that rubric involves. I'm Dr. Von Duke. I'm a professor of education. I've been helping clients and students on the EdTPA, not just the special education one, but also early elementary and secondary level portfolios for the past 6 years. I have a 100% success rate, and I'm here to help you with this task that maybe at a different time in your life you could easily move through, but given that you're often in your final year of studies, maybe your first year of teaching or your student teaching year, all of the moving parts here can be overwhelming. So that said, let's get to this rubric again. So rubric 13 then breaks down to 3 parts. What's the specific feedback you gave related to the strength? And you want an example from a need. How did you then extend that feedback, remind them of that feedback, explain it, gather it, refine it, and then express that to that student before they used it in a subsequent task or before they will use it in a subsequent task. So let me talk to you briefly about how this would be scored. So as always, there's 5 possible scoring levels for each rubric. 5 is pretty hard to get for a number of reasons, and I have a separate video about that. Mostly because you as a candidate don't like to give control to students, and reviewers don't like to give out 5s. A 1 is obviously very easy to get. You can answer almost any gibberish in there and you'll get a 1 for that because it just is not related. It's like so vaguely related to what the question says that you get a 1, which of course is a fail, but it's not a 0, right? A 2 would be some vague explanation. So in the case of rubric 13, you're saying how they're going to understand or use it. So you might say, I will read my feedback to them, or I will go over the problem again. So you're basically just saying you're going to reiterate your feedback to them in some way. What makes it different, a 2 different from a 3 is, in 3, you're going to add how that feedback supported them in obtaining the learning goal, either academically or through their behavior or for their engagement. Now, this is one of the rare places where behavior and engagement counts towards your rubric score. Most of the time, they're looking for everything related to the academic learning. So an example of this would be, I gave positive reinforcement to my focus learner, which helped them stay confident to keep working or to do well on the next learning task. So that is still pretty vague, but you've acted that extra piece. So you have your feedback, it relates to your learner, and you talk about how it keeps them moving towards that learning goal. 4 kind of bumps up the expectation there. And here you want to talk about how it helps them obtain the learning goal related to their strengths or needs. So before you gave them specific advice related to a strength or need, now you're saying how that advice helps them with that given that need or given that strength get to the learning goal. So an example of that would be, say what the need is first of all, be sure to state what it is. So my student needs to remember the steps for solving a problem. So I will use the 10 frames again and model how I first read the numbers aloud of my equation, and then I circle the numbers by counting them aloud, making sure that I'm tracking myself so he can do the same in subsequent tasks when he needs to solve subtraction or addition, whatever that problem was. Another would be my student forgot a step and needs to remember all parts of the procedure. I told them in the third step of your problem, you were correct, but in the fourth step, you forgot to borrow from the tens column. Now, this is not, I'm using this as a need. You see there's a strength there and a need there, but I am focusing on this as a need. You can't use it both ways. To support the student, I will add this feedback to a series of steps that the student will mark off while solving problems. That way the student will remember to use my feedback in the future. So here you've not only said what the feedback, how it supports the student to get to the learning goal, but also you're extending it now by turning it into a checkoff sheet for the student. And then to get a 5, you just have to show the same question in terms of a strength and a need. So this one is a little bit easier to get a 5 on because of that, if you've related your feedback to a strength, which most of you have. So in this case, you might say something like, my student has a strength of successfully answering multi-step subtraction problems. So I will list the successful steps that the student took in solving the problem this time and provide it to him as a reminder of what he's done successfully to solve multi-step problems, obviously to solidify the procedure that he knows, but you want to make sure that he keeps knowing that moving into the future. So then you can borrow from my examples here, but I've sort of made them a little bit more generic. So I provided my student with specific feedback related to his strength. Quote that, my feedback reinforces their successful skill, which helps him to say what it helps in terms of obtaining the learning goal, and then say how you're understanding and extending this feedback on subsequent tasks and in a simpler fashion for the need. Now, a little commercial here. This brief, quick, and dirty gets to the heart of this issue, but in my courses, I always have 3 lessons. So I walk you through the commentary and the rubric and explain so that you understand how they are broken down and how they are similar and not similar to each other. And then we gather your evidence, and then we draft that evidence into a draft document so that you have specifically exactly what you need row by row for each part of the question. And then we write that up. I have sentence starters and editing and submission kind of notes for all of my courses. And then